Welcome to the EOSC-Pillars webinar, coming together to map the national landscape analysis on EOSC between 5 relevant projects with member states. This is co-organized with the EOSC Secretariat, EOSC Nordic, and EOSC Europe. Our goal today is to introduce and present the efforts towards bringing in national initiatives in line with the EOSC vision and the work that it will take to do that. With the regional projects having kick-started between July and this month, this is a very timely webinar. So today we will begin with a welcome message from Christian Cuciniello from the European Commission's DG RTD, followed by an introduction to EOSC-Pillar by Fulvio Galeazzi. EOSC Nordic will then be presented by Sara Contro, and EOSC Synergy by Isabel Campos, as well as EOSC Europe by Biljana Krasanovic. EOSC Secretariat in its coordination role will also be presented by Andrea Grisella, and an overview of EOSC-Pillar's concept for the Regional Coordination Board will be presented by Fulvio Galeazzi. Finally, I'll be presenting some engagement opportunities with EOSC-Pillar and moderating the interactive Q&A session. Please note that we will be receiving questions via Slido. So just head on to slido.com and type #EOSC-Pillar. We'll show you that again later during the Q&A portion. And now for the first presentation, I'm passing the floor to Christian Cuciniello from the EC. Christian, the floor is yours.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Christian Cuciniello from the European Commission, Unit Open Science of the Directorate General of Research and Innovation. I have the pleasure of being the project officer of the 5 projects that we'll hear from today. And on this matter, over the past decades, we got acquainted with the concept of open science and the new paradigm of science built on transparent and data-driven research. So in Europe, this vision, the vision on open science and the establishment of the Open Science Commons are being realized through an ambitious program, the European Open Science Cloud, also called EOSC. The EOSC aims to offer a virtual environment with open and seamless services for storage, management, analysis, and reuse of the research data across borders and disciplines. This will be done by federating existing scientific data infrastructures that currently are dispersed across disciplines and member states. So the European Open Science Cloud initiative has been proposed in 2016 by the European Commission as part of the European Cloud initiative. After there was an extensive consultation between 2016 and 2017, and the summary outcome of the consultation was presented in March 2018 by the European Commission in a form of a roadmap for implementing the EOSC. So the European Open Science Cloud was officially launched in the 23rd of November 2018 in Vienna. There was the Vienna Declaration on the EOSC governance structure that summarizes the most important steps and reminds the commitments agreed upon by the member states. It also emphasized the need to actively support this joint effort to ensure smooth and successful implementation. So, the governance structure of the EOSC was presented in Vienna, and as defined in the implementation roadmap, the governance is structured in the governance board for supervising the implementation of EOSC, the executive board to ensure the implementation and accountability, and the stakeholder community to provide input and recommendation through consultation mechanisms. The executive board is the operative body that is called to provide advice and support on EOSC implementation and monitoring. The executive board activities are performed by 5 working groups. The landscape, that is supposed to mapping the existing research infrastructure, which are candidates to be part of the EOSC Federation. the FAIR working group that is implementing the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data principles by defining the corresponding requirements for the development of EOSC services in order to foster cross-disciplinary interoperability. The architecture working group that will define the technical framework required to enable and sustain an evolving EOSC federation system. The rules of participation that will design the rules that shall define the rights, the obligation, governing the EOSC transactions between users, providers, and operators. And the sustainability that will provide a set of recommendations concerning the implementation of an operational, scalable, and reusable EOSC federation after 2020. So, the European Commission, what's its role? The European Commission is providing financial support to the implementation of EOSC by means of projects under the framework program Horizon 2020. You can see in the slide the focus of the different calls that have been and will be launched. So let me bring your attention back to what I said in the first slide. So EOSC aims to federate existing scientific data infrastructure currently dispersed across discipline and the EU member states. It is right here that the topic Infra EOSC 5B places its core. With 4 geographically distributed projects and the support of the EOSC Secretariat, the Commission aims to support the coordination, the convergence, and the federation of EOSC relevant national and thematic initiatives, and support the gradual alignment of policy and practices to the EOSC standard. So we also would like to enable EOSC non-commercial services to be accessed through the EOSC portal and support the harmonization of procedures and policies at the member states level and promote training and on EOSC and open access, fostering the adoption of standard and federated services. So the 4 geographical projects are also called to interact closely among themselves and with the EOSC governance, notably the executive board. In fact, the 4 projects are currently contributing to the mapping of existing services, supporting the landscape working group of the executive board. At this point, it's only left for me to thank the EOSC-Pillar, EOSC Synergy, NIFOS Europe, EOSC Nordic, and the EOSC Secretariat for contributing to the EOSC implementation. And thank you for your attention, and I'm really eager to listen to the project's contribution. So I pass back the mic to our host, Rob. Thanks again.
Thank you, Christian. Now we will hear from Fulvio Galeazzi, our project manager in EOSC-Pillar, who will introduce the project to everyone. Fulvio, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Okay, can you hear my screen? Can you see my screen? Yeah, okay, great.
Yes.
Maximize. Good morning, and thank Rob for organizing this. So I'm presenting here very briefly what EOSC-Pillar is and what we are doing. So here in just one slide, you see the coverage of the project. We are covering 5 countries in the central western part of Europe, and here is the main data about the main numbers about the project. It's 18 partners over these 5 countries, and we already heard about what the overall goal of the project by Christian, our project officer. So EOSC-Pillar started officially the 1st of July 2019, and this duration will be for 36 months. So the main objective of the project is to support the EOSC implementation. That's why we are called Pillar, because we look at ourselves as the supporting one of the supporting projects to the whole EOS building. And I think one element which is characteristic of EOS-Pillar is that we are strongly focused on national initiatives. By national initiative, I mean all the call them tables where representatives from research infrastructures or data providers or communities of researchers sit, try to or align at the national level their policies and their activities. These national initiatives are at different stages of advancement across different countries. Some are a bit more advanced, some are advanced only in specific fields, some others are still being born. So we believe that this is the right moment to tackle all of this complexity and try to do some work to organize and move together towards a common goal. The project work plan, roughly speaking, can be thought of having two different sets of activities. One is more, I would say, organizational, and the other technical. By organizational, I mean anything else which is not writing pieces of code and publishing a service, but rather taking people together, study and elaborate on policies and so on. Here you see the keywords. First of all, we want to take a picture of what's the state of the art of national initiatives and the computing and data service. I will tell a bit more in the coming 2 slides. And then we also want to consolidate national initiatives, harmonize policies, and be a relevant player within all the rather complex EOS panorama, which is made of a number of stakeholders. Of course, coordination with other initiatives is an important aspect, and we do have specific activities for this. And while on the more technical side, we want to do our share to promote the uptake of fair practices, although there is a specific project which is actually doing this with a much broader scope than ours. However, we want to go in together with Fair is Fair and do also our part. And on the application side, of course, having a successful EOS portal is not only a matter of having the national initiatives sustain it, and we believe this is important because especially for the future, the future sustainability, the national initiatives are the perfect glue between a European level service and the base of the researchers. But cannot only be organizational, but of course the people have to find useful stuff in the portal. So we started from our community, we selected 9 use cases, and we'll aim to bring these at the operational level to the portal. So first activity we are dealing with is a national initiative survey, which is essentially a questionnaire, but a rather complex one. This is the areas that we want to cover, anything from the business model, service agreements, how the users have access to the services, by which technical means and by which policies, whether data management is in place and to what extent, and what is the panorama of these communities, services, and how they use them. And we identified 4 targets, which we grouped into these 4 classes. The infrastructures, which is complex and maybe confusing name, but we think you can think of it as simply as services. Research infrastructures of national relevance, funding bodies, and universities. The questionnaire was launched a few days ago, 3rd of October, and will be open until the end of October. And for any questions, you are welcome to contact us. The activity is led by University of Vienna, and we invested quite a lot of resources in this activity. And we were, since we were also the first of the projects to start our activities back in July, we had managed to dedicate quite some time to it. During the development of it, we were open for early feedback from both the other projects and the other stakeholders. There was a round of tests and cognitive pre-testing. So it was really a complex matter. The questionnaire is not just a sheet of paper with n questions, but there is a lot which you can't see immediately. Might require quite some work. The idea is that we want to identify clearly what the respondents to the questionnaire are, so that we can ask them later and in case of doubts, or and making sure, and this ensures also that we have relevant, and we have responses which really are the picture of the entity that we want to photograph. It's not just an open consultation, but we select the targets and we pick the best person suited to give us a picture for that particular area. And all of this was developed by EOSC-Pillar, but can be used by other projects under CC BY license. Last, sorry, I was a little longer than anticipated. How to get involved with EOSC-Pillar. So first immediate action would be help yourself, meaning your service, your community, if it's not already in our set of use cases, have yourself captured by the questionnaire. If I can follow along the lines of the questionnaire, I try to identify 4 tracks how to get involved with us. For funding bodies, we would be willing to discuss about long-term strategies in terms of the EOSC Open Science Cloud and the National Open Science Cloud initiatives, and how to incentivize the good behavior, good practices. For infrastructure, for services, there is a number of opportunities for training, proposing use cases, and we can offer support to integration. Related to this, we will have an open call for new communities, which will end up, will open up at the end of next year. For research infrastructure, let's talk about interoperability, customer collaboration, and common services. For universities, most of the times, sometimes these services are hard to find, so let's help you to make your service discoverable and discuss how to adapt the curricula and incentives for the new professions of the future, like data stewardship. However, whatever your idea, just come to us and share thoughts. And this is the way you can interact with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Fulvio. Next up, we have Sara Contra, who is the EOSC Nordic Policies, Legal Issues, and Sustainability Lead. Sara, the floor is yours. I think you're still muted.
Okay, thank you, Rob, and good morning to everybody. So I will give you a presentation of the European Open Science Cloud for the Nordic and Baltic countries. The project started in September and will run until August 2022. This is a project coordinated by Gudmund Host from the NAIC. We have 24 participants, and we cover the countries of Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Denmark, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Yes, so about our objectives. We we support the coordination, harmonization, and alignment of Nordic and Baltic national policies and practices related to the provision of horizontal research data services to EOSC. Our aim is to increase the discoverability of the services in the Baltic and Nordic countries, and of course to extend and expand their use to make them accessible through the EOSC portal. We promote and support the uptake of fair data practices and certification schemas across the Nordics. The aim is to accelerate the progress and attractiveness of EOSC, and we do this by piloting and delivering solutions that are developed and tested in a useful and functional cross-border environment. And then we also build a knowledge hub that delivers training and technical support to service providers and communities. I will focus in this presentation on the activities in the area of policies, legal issues and sustainability, since this is also where this landscaping activities that is the subject of our webinar today, that where we are running these activities. So there are 4 different topics in this work package about policies and principles. So we identify and map the open science policies and resource provision principles that are applied in the Nordic and Baltic countries. We investigate models, roles and responsibilities that are needed to make provisioning and delivery of EOS services and resources in a coordinated way at national level. We try to identify the legal challenges and also those that are current and potential that are associated with sharing of data and resources across national borders, and we will of course not only identify them but also try to find solutions and suggest solutions to tackle them. And then we bring things related to policy to the discussion at the Nordic and Baltic level, and also give advice on the directions that national initiatives should take, so that they are in line with relevant EOSC policies. About this work package, so you can see here the planning. It will run during the whole duration of the project. There we have 9 deliverables and 4 milestones, and the first deliverable is due for month 6, and that is the deliverable on open science policies and resource provision in the Nordic and Baltic countries. And also in February, that is the month 6, we will have the first policy workshop. So more about this mapping the national landscape. So as I said, this is due this report or deliverable by February 2020, and the idea is that we will create current view of the status of open science policies and access policies in the EOSC Nordic countries, and we take a look at that EOSC relevant data infrastructures and services that can contribute to the implementation of the EOSC, and especially look at which kind of national research infrastructures and other infrastructures could be of interest at European level and beyond the current remit that these infrastructures or services have at the moment, and also what is the willingness of these services and infrastructures to be federated and to contribute to the EOSC, and then about the maturity, that how prepared are these infrastructures to be federated to the EOSC. And also we try to identify relevant services for cross-border piloting. About our method, so we do this as a desk research, and then we will address identified targets with the questionnaire. The survey will be launched in the beginning of November, and we will have the first results in mid-December, and then we will have time to validate the results and make analysis during December and January, and we will have the draft report ready by the end of January. To conclude my presentation, opportunities for engagement. So we are organizing some workshops and meetings. So the first one will be in December in conjunction to the EIRG workshop. So we will have a policy meeting in Helsinki in December. Then we will organize in collaboration with Open Air a workshop in Copenhagen, and the date is not yet fixed, but it will be sometime in the late January or the beginning of February. And then, well, one more thing why to attend EOS Symposium is that of course many of I think all people from all the regional projects will be in there. So this is a chance to meet also EOS Nordic people. And well, you can see here the relevant people and their contact details. We will have our website online in November, and you can already follow us, for instance, at Twitter. Thank you. Yes.
Excellent, Sara. Thank you very much for your presentation. And up next, we have representing EOSC Synergy, we have Isabel Campos, who is the coordinator. Isabel, the floor is yours.
So, okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I think
Okay.
just need to go to present mode. Yes.
So I put the present mode. So, okay, good morning, everyone. I am, my name is Isabel Campos. I am a researcher at the National Spanish Research Council, CSIC, and my background is physics. I'm a physicist. So I have been asked to lay out a bit the objectives of the project. First, this is the, let me try to minimize this. This is the project vision. Okay, our consortium builds on the investments and existing know-how and resources of the area of countries that we coordinate. As I said, this builds on the expertise of Ibergrid, the Iberian Partnership for Distributed Computing, and is coordinated by CSIC on behalf of Ibergrid. Let's move. Okay. The objectives, the concrete objectives of EOSC Synergy orbit around 4 categories, right? One is capacity expansion. So we need to define a strategy to come up with a critical mass of infrastructure that is shareable and accessible to the thematic services that we are offering and to their peers in the European landscape and also in South America, because we take also in our colleagues from Brazil and from Chile, from the Lago experiment, and try to pilot, let's say, the tools that we have available now for data sharing and to see how to bring in South America into EOSC as a possibility to enhance the community, right? We also are thinking that a rational strategy to deploy research data repositories in a following 4 principles needs to be devised, and then our intention here, our strategy, is to come up with concrete examples of research data repositories that will work that way. The area more research-oriented of the project is the software quality baseline, and in that respect, we intend to provide the tools that are self-deployable by people to check the quality of the service that they want to run. And also we want to pilot a sort of fairness self-assessment check-in as a service. Yeah. At the level of building capabilities, we want to integrate the existing production level thematic services in EOSC. You can find information about this on our webpage, I will show you later. And at the level of skills development, we want to implement training as a full-fledged flavor in the EOSC portal, so that there is a place where people can find information on how things work and the kind of things that one can do. Right. This is the consortium. Here's the, okay, yeah, you have the map. In the consortium, we have number of countries, and in these countries we have the institutions, the major institutions that run infrastructure and provide user support and network support to the researchers in the country. As you can see, so we are many. We have some ministerial representation from Portugal as an explicit partner. We have the network people responsible in the areas, and I think things are moving quite smooth in that respect. Our contribution to the EOSC portfolio, okay, here you have this nice sphere that we got from the project EOSC-hub. So what is our provision of having an added value to EOSC? These are probably the thematic services. And in order to do that, we will make it possible sharing of resources by a national cloud capacity, both at the computing and storage level. And then our contribution to the hub. The hub is the layer that allows federating and enabling services. So we will provide a training platform, a training program and materials, and we will provide quality criteria and verification procedures for services and fair maturity assessment also as a service. Our contribution to the EOSC Federating Core is again on these lines, at the level of software quality assurance and services and fairness check and service, as well as promoting the adoption of technical interoperability guidelines and access policies. So when it comes to the landscape, okay, we have had a couple of discussions, not many so far, on alignment of policies level and this landscaping activity. What we are doing, I guess this is particular to every project because the level of maturity of the policy development in the countries is different in the different consortia. We are, for a start, capturing the fixed photo of what is the status of every country. And this I can show you already. You can go, this is our webpage, EOSC-Synergy.eu. So you can scroll down, and here you have the map, right? So we are collecting information from all the countries involved. We had more or less half of it collected. And what is public, we are putting it already here on our webpage. This is the status of things in Slovakia, for example. This is the status of play in Spain that we have from our ministry representative. This is the status in the Netherlands, and this is about Germany, right? So the fixed photo, as I said, we are collecting there. You can have a look later on. And then our analysis will take place during the month of November and try to find out commonalities, find out policies that we think are interesting when it comes to deploy shared resources in EOSC or collaboration platforms, etc. And then we will provide our vision on policy in this respect, right? As I said, in our project, policy spans technical and also networking activities, because technical interoperability and compliance with policies, etc., is also part of the policy. So when a resource center sets up to join EOSC, they have to know where they go and under which conditions they should operate. For example, we could not, to put a very silly example, we could not integrate a resource center that does not follow obvious security procedures. So these are things that need really to permeate down to all the countries that and services and service providers that want to join this endeavor, right? And then, okay, so this is the timeline of the project. Okay, during the first year, the main activity. Okay, we will try to come up. This is month 12. With the first integration round in EOSC, integration of a couple of pilot thematic services, of 2 research data repositories, and come up with the software baseline defined and the first set of services going through continuous development and continuous integration support for quality assurance. We also plan to have training material and quality criteria ready in the first 12 months of the project. At the moment, we are analyzing the technical catalog of services and the feasibility of such training platforms according to what is in the market. And okay, I leave you here with our contacts. You can contact me on the coordinator mailing list, our communication teams here, and you can follow us also in Twitter. But for us, the main channel of information will be the webpage that we intend to keep reasonably maintained together with our blog. Okay, so thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Isabel. That was EOSC Synergy. Before we move on to our next speaker, I'd just like to remind everyone that we're collecting questions via Slido. The link is there in the chat, so please log on. There's already a test poll at the moment. Please do participate. If you have any questions from the previous presentations, feel free to put them into Slido. Next, we have Biljana Kozanovic from EOSC Europe. Biljana, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. NIFOS is an acronym from the National Initiative for Open Science, and the correct pronunciation is NIFOS. And we are much bigger in the number of countries than the other, let's say, sister projects, which means we are countries for Southeast Europe, almost 15 of them, with 22 institutions which are partners of this project, which means huge number of countries and partners. And the main goal is to be a core contributor to the EOSC service portfolio, but also to help to EOSC governments. And one of the main goal is to ensure the inclusiveness of the initiatives in our countries on the European level. This is our core vision and mission. So this is the methodology we used after some landscaping, and I will talk much more about that in a next minute. Our goal is also to define technical policies and tools for our services for the EOSC inclusion. After the landscaping, we will do our best and to boost in all our country to building national open science cloud initiatives. So the idea is to form a group of people in every country who will share and work on the EOSC on their national, but also on the European level. In that way, we will work to support the generic and thematic providers, but also on the open research, data management, and fair compliance of already existing repositories, and also for the new one. We plan to include a lot of people in every country. Some of them we will call NIFOS promoters, but also we will use our network of people already established through the other projects. As for the landscaping, okay, I forgot to say that our project started on September the 1st, and yesterday we finished our kickoff, which means that we have to do a lot of work during the summer, which means pre-project activities. And on the landscape, we started work already in May, and the goal is to map the existing landscape at the national level, and this includes all initiative, politics, but also topics such as infrastructure services, data privacy, etc. I would just like to mention that research assessments we also add into our survey, because we think that almost on every meeting now in Europe talking about open science, the research assessments are something which everybody expect will boost all these open science things. We know that on the EOSC Secretariat level, there are working group for landscaping, and I'm participating in it. But my opinion and my feeling is that this EOSC Secretariat working group is based on the open air pages, majority of the content coming from that source, and almost 8 of our 15 countries are not part of open air. So we expect to have really, not say excellent picture of what is happening in the region, but to have some information about what is happening in this part of the world. As for the subtask for the landscaping, as a first task, we created a stakeholders group. We recognized 6 of them, and we invited on all our partners to create comprehensive list of institutions for every stakeholders group. And at the end, we just shared during the kickoff, we collected more than 350 units for the whole consortium. So also we designed and created the survey going through few review process, and at the end also include all these GDPR things, because some countries are quite sensitive on that. And also we create already the invitation letters. We think and suggest our partners countries to translate these invitation letters, because the country representative will send the invitation to the respondents of our survey. And we also suggested them to expand the invitation letter in the way that the people from the institutions in their countries understand better the need. The survey will be online on October 21st, and we are planning to have it open for the 4 weeks, because the deadline for the final report is already in December this year. We planned to inform our country representative every week on the level of responses, because we established the goal of 60% percentage of responses, that it is something which will be satisfied. The survey is based on some few already existing surveys. There are some acronyms I will not translate it, but be aware that some of these countries are not part of any open science initiatives until this project. So we have to include also these very base questions. Of course, we use an EOSC-Pillar draft version. Thank you, Pillar, for sharing with us. And also our final version, we will compare with their final version. Also, we included some internal project needs, which means some questions defined by the work package leaders. The fact is that there are just a common set of questions for all groups. This is about profile and also about what is the expectations of from EOSC in the institutions. And the maximum for field survey is about 30 minutes. And we also established a new group of stakeholders, which is open science facilitators. The idea is that a lot of our questions are supplied with the links to the web pages explaining potentially less known terms. This is especially for those questions which are based on the European Commission's recommendations, because we think that maybe not all of participants are knowledgeable about that all these documents. And all questions are on the one page, so they could be printed and thinking about that, and after that to answer on that. So in the next steps, okay. And the next step for the whole project, this is we have initial mapping for open research data management certification standards and instruments. We will also work on refinement of categorization of services. Also, we asked, this is something we concluded on the kickoff, to make decision and ask our partners to suggest very first services to be onboarded, to thematic, to generic, and to repositories. And we will try also to work and will work on early dissemination and training campaign. And thank you for listening, and we are really looking forward to work together. This is our website, launched just, let's say, 2 weeks ago. So, but all partners will work to put all this information and other interesting things on this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Biljana Kosanovic for NIFOS Europe. Now we will move on to the next presentation. While not a regional project in itself, it does have a special role within the EOSC projects. Next up, we have Andrea Grisilla, who is the EOSC Secretariat Coordinator. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning to all of you, to my colleagues in the 5B project, and to the other participants to this webinar. I want to start this presentation with the which is the scope, by defining which is the scope of the EOSC Secretariat. Which is
sorry, Andrea, I think the presentation is not projecting. Could you make sure to share the presentation app?
It seems it is.
Okay, let me see. I can also share the presentation if it's
yeah, because to me it's like it's shared. So
okay, let me just give me a moment. I'm going to share. Okay. Is it broadcasting well? Now good? Okay, I think yes.
Thank you. Well, I will just tell you next for the next slide. So please, thanks, Rob. So the scope of the EOSC Secretariat is to deliver support at 360 degrees to the EOSC governance. The EOSC governance mainly identified as the executive board. So this board of 11 persons, neutral persons, that is there to create, to support and advise, and to bring forward policies with ideas of policies, the implementation of EOSC. Next slide, Rob. The EOSC Secretariat, in fact, wants to be also the layer in between the EOSC governance and the various stakeholder communities initiatives, plans, and projects. There are many ways in which we want to be the bridge between the EOSC governance and the community. It can be with open consultations, with the creation of a knowledge base, with the implementation and the organization of stakeholders' annual events, board meetings, and especially also bringing closer the community to the working groups. And in this case, the ones that is the focus of our webinar of today, especially the one on landscaping that has been mentioned before. Next slide. So you have already seen this slide in Christian Cucinello's presentation. We can see that there are 3 or 4 main entities in the governance of the EOSC. One is the governance board, where there are the member states and the associated country delegates. The executive board that proposes and monitors and reports to the governance board. Emanation of the executive board are the 5 existing working groups on architecture, landscape, rules of participation, fair and sustainability, and the stakeholder forum, now going to be renamed in stakeholder community. The EOSC Secretariat was to be, as I said, the layer, the ground where all these is 3 or maybe 4 main entities for the government can found inputs to set up and implement policies and ideas and plans for the further implementation of EOSC. Next slide, please. This is, in short, the structure in work packages that you will see in a later. I will give the presentation to Rob, and he will share the presentation, so we'll have more time to see this structure in the further moment, in the later stage. Next slide. Just you can click many times. So this is the kind of plans that the EOSC governance has given to itself in order to fully reach the federating core of the implementation of EOSC at the end of 2020. Next slide. And this is the consortium made of 11 partners. Technopolis is the coordinators, and the other partners are disseminated a bit across all of Europe. Guiding principles for the EOSC Secretariat are represented by, of course, the fact of being independent and neutral, the work that is done under the supervision of the executive board, especially the 4th point, the support of a user-centric EOSC implementation, being flexible and agile, and doing everything under the paramount criteria of transparency and openness. Next slide. So what is also the EOSC Secretariat doing? The EOSC Secretariat is launching ideas for studies that are meant to support decision-making at governance level. For example, some confirmed topics on which these studies will be launched: investigating innovative business models for the EOSC, rules of participation for service providers and users, legal and organizational framework for sustainable governance. Other studies are also being launched in the very next future. The idea is that once the working groups have made their plans about what they want to see in a study, the EOSC Secretariat will launch open calls to which the stakeholder community can reply by submitting applications. Applications will be screened, evaluated, and then the study will be commissioned to the awarded entity. Next slide. The EOSC Secretariat has also the resource, can count on the resource of this co-creation budget, which amounts to 4 million euros, and which is meant to be shared with the stakeholder community and the EOSC governance entities for any kind of activities that are related to the EOSC governance and that are focusing to the real implementation of EOSC. Who can apply for this co-creation budget? Well, a request can come from individuals or natural persons residing in member states of the European Union or associated countries. And of course, we want to avoid the double funding. So no activities will be funded, activities that are already receiving funds through other EU initiatives. Which kind of activities can be funded? Well, we can go from stakeholder engagement events and workshops, consultation meetings, public consultations, implementation of advisory boards in a specific domain, like an industrial advisory board on EOSC, publications, and so forth. So really the stakeholder community is invited to submit requests for any kind of activity that is related to the take-up of EOSC in the next 1.5 years. Next slide. Evaluation criteria are the same that are applied to Horizon 2020. The activities have to show the benefit and the fact that they bring added value to existing EOSC activities. And of course, the EOSC Secretariat will evaluate these requests according to preset KPIs. The process is pretty simple. It goes from between 30 and 45 days. The applicant will send the request form. We will first check the consistency of the proposal. We give time to the applicant to give some adjustments if they are needed. Then the Secretariat Steering Group will process and evaluate the request, and then we will let the applicant know if the proposal has been approved or rejected. If it's approved, 50% of the requested budget will be given at the before the activity starts, and then the rest of the approved budget will be delivered after the activity has ended and upon submission of all the receipts. Next. But we were talking also about landscaping this time. So all the projects that you have talked before me, and together with the EOSC Secretariat, decided that all the results of this surveying of all this landscaping analysis at regional events should be brought to consistency and possibly to unique results and reports that is going also to be part of the documentation submitted to support the working groups on landscaping. So it's also, I take advantage of this moment also to reassure my colleagues on the fact that the working group on landscape will take into considerations all the landscaping that has been activities that have been processed and promoted and done in all projects, and we will try to bring into the analysis all countries of Europe and the associated countries. So we want to avoid that any country, any region, any actor has not been properly landscaping. That is why also the EOSC Secretariat has launched a call for an expert to assist with the landscaping analysis. The objective is to deliver the mapping of national service and infrastructures that might contribute to European Open Science Cloud. And the methodology for this analysis is going to be based on the collection of information through the surveys specifically designed by the 5B project and you've heard this aspect just before my intervention. The selected expert should provide assistance with the coordinated implementation of the surveys, should coordinate integration analysis at EU level of the results produced in those projects, extend possibly the analysis to countries that are not covered by this project, like Malta, Luxembourg, and Ireland, and then provide assistance in redacting the final report. Next slide. The profile for this expert, well, where we're looking for someone who has experience in working in European research infrastructures, someone that has good mapping analysis, stakeholder analysis, sociology and data analysis, activity planning and coordination. Ideally, the expert might think about having an amount of days for this work amounting to 45 days. The remuneration is for 500 euro per day, and all that travel costs and other possible costs are covered up to an amount of 36,000 euros. The deadline for application is pretty soon, so the 15th of October, and there will be a short time for the EOSC Secretariat to evaluate the applications, and then the start of activity will be the 25th of October and the end, the 15th of January 2020. You see the blue text on the right of the screen. There you can click and see the full text of the open call, and also you will see where it's possible to submit your application. Next slide. Just to mention that there are many other ways for the stakeholder community to engage with EOSC and to engage through EOSC Secretariat with the EOSC governance entities. Next slide. There are some important events ahead of us. The EOSC will be present at the RDA Europe event in Helsinki end of this month. And together with all the EOSC projects that you've heard before me, we will be present at and we'll organize especially the EOSC Symposium in Budapest end of November. This is it from my side.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So that was Andrea Grisilla from EOSC Secretariat. Now we'll go back to Fulvio Galeazzi, the project coordinator of EOSC-Pillar, who will then describe more about the Regional Coordination Board. Fulvio, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Actually, this will be very brief because it's related to something which is shaping up as we speak, essentially. During the other presentations, we heard a lot of several times words complementarity, commonality, and collaboration. So all the projects from this call are complementary grants. So they come from the same call, so which means that not a big surprise that all the 5B projects show a lot of commonality, and they are complementary grants, meaning that they are required to collaborate among them, and this mandate was clear since the beginning. Actually, this has happened with a lot of goodwill shown by all the projects. Has happened well before each project started. So we were the first starting in July, but collaboration, as someone has pointed out, started already back in April, May. So as is common when there is, more than two actors, the risk is that so we need to find a way to structure coordination among us, because everybody's willing to collaborate and share information, but if all of this happens with no, I would say, regulation is not the best word, but is not channeled through the appropriate fora, it's going to be going to cause a lot of confusion. So we are early on, we all agreed that the regional coordination board would be useful, and this is being established now. Now, the goal of this regional coordination would be to exchange information, to facilitate interaction, to speed up communication, ensure that no initiatives is lost, meaning that all other projects are aware of what the colleagues are doing and can find a way to join or co-organize and so on. Now this structure, this board has involves a more formal part on how we will be meeting and what procedure we will follow, which is under discussion, and the more practical part on the what of our activities. Now, as it often turns out, that the formal part has caused some headache, but I'm confident that now that the first activities have been kicked off and all the projects are up and running, also this part can be closed rather smoothly and be as lightweight as possible. I mean, the formal part. There are some immediate and obvious areas of collaboration, and you read the names here, and again, it's probably not a big surprise that the map exactly one-to-one with the executive board working groups, which means that the role of the regional coordination board will be, okay, on one side, coordinate among us, but also with the other levels. So, for example, this is already started with the landscape, which is the task force, which has started before the others. There's already a lot of interaction with the landscape working group, but also with other working groups, because landscape informs, in some sense, rules of participation and sustainability, which is again strictly related to rules of participation and so on. So that's essentially it for what's now the regional coordination board. So I would say it's shaping up bottom up. Like there's two parallel threads. The activities are, the projects are starting to nominate the representatives within the task forces, and we are self-organizing with the help of Secretariat and to start meeting regularly and find a way to work together. Then the open question is, what will be the role for the future for the regional coordination board? We as EOSC-Pillar envisage these would be, this structure could transform into something which would influence or be one of the influencers of the EOSC at large. However, this has to be seen, and there will be time to define the long-term mission of this board. I don't want to take more time, so I will close here.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fulvio. Now, unfortunately, we're very short on time, so let's just extend the webinar for another 5 more minutes or so to account for questions. Let me just share my screen for a second. And, okay. Okay, so for those who haven't done so yet, please do go to Slido where we are receiving questions. First question we have from Sergey Sipos. For Pillar and Nordic, as well as the others, you start with a survey or landscape review. Who are you aiming to reach and through what channels? Fulvio, would you like to start there?
Yes, as I explained during my presentation, we grouped the respondents into 4 broad areas. So funding bodies, universities, research infrastructures, both at the national level, both of national relevance as the national entity part of a European-wide research infrastructure, and what we call e-infrastructure, which has caused a lot of confusion, but it's services. So data archives, data repositories, computing services. We selected nationwide lists of addresses from, say, official sites or by our partners. And for example, from the national plans for research, this is one of the official sources, or the partners' contacts. And overall we managed to get a total of slightly above 1,000 respondents.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the projects who would like to respond to that question?
Yeah, so in the EOSC Nordic project, so our aim is also to contact research and e-infrastructures and universities and funders in these countries, and also as we use or methods we use both desk research. This is to find out about policies related to open science and other relevant policies related to EOSC, and then also we will have the survey that we will use email as a channel to the target groups.
Excellent. I think we have to move on to our next question from Yelena Angelis. How do the 4 projects take on board the in-road lessons? And the synchronization of RI roadmaps hasn't actually happened. Harmonization or alignment of open policies runs the same risk. Who would like to address it?
I can answer that. Okay. First one has to define what harmonization and convergence means, right? Because there are, I mean, in all the countries there are different rules, etc. But we are running already for more than 10 years with the e-infrastructure reflection group, right? Which has recently released or is about to release a very comprehensive, in my opinion, survey of the national nodes, right? So I think the important issue here is to realize that we don't start from scratch. That there is a lot of information that has been collected by bodies like EIRG, for example, and that every country should be, or every representative in EOSC should try to also to take into account the input and the situation that de facto exist. Yeah, yeah, one could try to standardize methodologies, etc. But again, I insist we should not try to start from scratch to do questionnaires and assessments and methodologies, because otherwise we do not progress.
Excellent, thank you very much. Next question from Carbonier. Is there an attempt to harmonize or standardize mapping of questionnaires and assessment methodologies across different regions? I'd like to give this opportunity to perhaps Andrea Grisella, in light of the recent consultation meetings.
Yes, the idea that that we had in the discussion already in May among the coordinators and participants to the different projects is that the EOSC-Pillar survey should be the basis of the mapping and the questionnaire that is inspiring all the others, let's say this way, and others will, based on that, as Biljana has said, and then modify them according to the different peculiarities and characteristics of the regions that are taken into consideration. So indeed, the effort is already there to have these questionnaires harmonized. The role also of this consultant, this expert, is to keep this harmonization ongoing throughout all this surveying phase. So in order that the pools of surveyed entities, institutions, practices, activities is always somehow consistent, and that the result that is produced in the end in the unique report shows these elements of harmonizations and standardizations as much as possible, because this will be the one of the documents on which the governance group, the working group on landscaping will then prepare policies, ideas for the implementation of EOSC as far as landscaping is concerned.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. Next, we need to move on to our next question from Anka Hinula. To EOSC-Pillar, why are research institutes not included in the survey? They contribute significantly in terms of research data, services, and users.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this question, because it gives me the chance to clarify one important point. Of course, research institutes will be included in the survey. Actually, they will be included a number of times, several times. You have to think about what I was mentioning before, the 4 categories are 4 profiles. So if I take, for example, the National Institute for Nuclear Physics in Italy, of which I'm most familiar, or the National Council for Research, they do any kind of research in whatever field. So it would be impossible to include the research institute this large as just one respondent. On the other hand, for example, INFN, we tackle this through, let's say, different sides of the same object, okay? Like, it is, in some sense, a funding body, although a second-level funding body, because it decides what are the priorities between, let's say, high-energy physics, passive physics, or theoretical physics. So they receive one questionnaire, and this goes to one person, one specific person, who is entitled to respond for that part. And then they are part of research infrastructures, and then so they get another questionnaire for each research infrastructure they're part of. And then they are also offering services like, for example, computing services within the framework of the CERN experiments. And again, there will be identified persons for each specific computing data service. So the idea is that each respondent is responds for what he knows best. Okay? And there will be many.
Excellent, thank you. Next, we have a question from Milan. How will services, repositories, and data archives will be interoperable and certified if we don't have any common guidelines and policies on an EU level? Who would like to address that question?
Yeah, there are high level guidelines. No, this is what the people on FAIR are trying to come up with in FAIR is FAIR, right? But the project EOSC-hub is also trying to address interoperability. So the answer is probably work is ongoing to that, yeah, to create some very lightweight layer to provide a sort of technical and policy guidelines for this. But this is being built as it happens. So it is true that this is one of the major blocks of progress in this respect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we only have time for maybe the last 2 or 3 questions. Another question from Milan. All presented projects are islands of infrastructures. How will you connect these islands in one European infrastructure?
I can try my view on this. Yeah, actually, I see our project and the other projects as a small scale EOSC, in that already within us, for example, our 5 countries, there's a lot of complexity in how services are dealt with. So the good point of this is that if we manage to do something useful at this small scale level, then we can transport this experience to the European-wide infrastructure. And for example, I mentioned our 9 use cases. I do believe that bringing the services which is confined within a single infrastructure, bringing it up to a European level, just means exposing it through another portal, which is probably not that ambitious. Whereas we wanted to do something a bit more complex, like putting together pieces from different communities and or different nations, and assemble these into a new service and operate it and see how it works. I mean, at production level, And while doing this, also you will encounter a number of problems, like who is updating the services, who is maintaining it for the different parts. And so you will naturally be led to attack other aspects of the problem, which is the business model of life. So this is our the way we see services federating to the European portal.
Thank you. So since we only have 2 questions left, I'd like to invite the audience to please upvote the questions you'd like our panelists to answer. In the meantime, I also invite you to check out our poll. Do you think national initiatives are already well linked within the EU at the present? We're at 70%, 79% no, but that's just from 14 respondents. If you think so or think otherwise, please respond. Now, meanwhile, let's go back to our questions. So at the moment, we have a question from Biljana Nifos for the EC and EOSC Secretariat. Turkey, Kosovo, and Israel are approaching Nifos and would like to join some of their activities. Could you suggest the way or line of support for them?
Just to say, Biljana speaking,
yes.
that Andreas already responded me during the chat windows, another channel of communication. So I will stay in touch with Andreas, but also the people from those 3 countries, and trying to find the way to work together. So just
excellent.
Since we might have participants from countries that are outside the countries that are in the scope of the projects, everything is possible. I invite the coordinators of the projects to, if they see that there are areas that we might investigate more that are outside the geographical scope of our projects, for example, to file simply a request of co-creation budget at the EOSC Secretariat for example, the creation of an EOSC workshop with participants from these external countries, for example, workshop on landscaping of their areas. Of course, the EOSC Secretariat will be happy to support with the co-creation budget these kind of events.
Okay, thank you, but we will stay in touch on this topic.
Excellent, great. So next question from Philippe from Praise. How do you plan to deal with resources that require access to their resources through peer review process, such as HPC?
Yeah, I think it's a question of openness, no? In the sense that as long as those guidelines of how to access those resources are clear, either at the national point of view or from the praise point of view, then it's okay. I mean, EOSC is a facilitator for researchers. It's not the resource broker, right? The brokering needs to be at the national level, and when it concerns pan-European infrastructures, it needs to reside on proper transnational access rules, right? But I do not think that it is mission of EOSC to act as a broker of resources, because the complexity of all the infrastructures available is very high. Yeah? We just need to make sure that the mechanisms to access resources are properly defined and transparent. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Isabel, let's have a look at our polls. At the moment, we have 84% who believe that national initiatives are still not well linked enough with the EU context. So that's some food for thought for some of our projects present and what they can do to alleviate that. I think we just have one last question. The other questions that won't be addressed today, we will try our best to send them to our panelists and send them to you by email. Last question from Gergely Sipos. For EOSC-Pillar, can we access the survey questionnaires and provide feedback?
Well, now that the questionnaire has been launched, I mean, if you mean provide feedback by helping us adding, moving words and questions, this is of course not possible any longer. even though we spent quite a lot of time in the questionnaire, a lot of time was spent during the summer break, which of course didn't help in reaching out to 100% of possible stakeholders who could give us useful feedback. We try to incorporate whatever we received via various channels. On the other hand, the question is, I want to make sure that that research infrastructure or that service has been considered in your questionnaire. This is of course possible because we have a channel through which we can add more respondents, even when the questionnaire is running.
Excellent, thank you very much. So I think we're out of time now. I don't think anyone had any chance to submit their advice to our active poll, but that this will remain present at the moment, and it will remain live even after the webinar is done. So an active poll on your open advice to the projects and initiatives present. Where should we focus more on? So we see there, someone has said simplification. Someone has requested for the link to EOS Secretariat's experts for landscape. We'll make sure that's up to involve more communities. So we look forward to more inputs from there. For now, I think we can stop here. Just